So the story of training camp 2024 writ large, because you're kind of kicking off our training camp coverage right here on the program. I appreciate you doing that.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. Is what? What would you say?
You know, I like, it's just kind of hit me last night. You know, you see the Trent Williams thing, and
where he's not there. He's holding out.
Not holding in, holding out.
Right.
And you know, I just, it's almost like players are again realizing their worth. And you know, you see these contractual situations bubbling up like everywhere now, and how one thing relates to the other, which is so interesting, right? Like, so you see what happened earlier in the offseason with the Dolphins with Jalen Waddle, with the Lions with Amon-Ra St. Brown, with the Eagles with Devontae Smith.
And A.J. Brown.
Yeah, and with the Texans with Nico Collins. And like, those teams were super aggressive getting deals done. Well, why? Because they knew Justin Jefferson was going to get done.
Definitely.
You know? And so now you have the Niners and the Cowboys hanging out there with Ayuk and Lamb, right? The Cowboys obviously have more than just Lamb hanging out there. They also have Dak and potentially Micah Parsons. And, you know, like the Trent Williams thing to me relates back to Christian McCaffrey, right? Like, now the Christian McCaffrey thing was quietly began after the Super Bowl. Like, and this is a guy who felt his football mortality as a running back, felt like he was worth more than he was being paid, was correct about that. They felt like they had to do a contract adjustment before they did Ayuk. Because if you do Ayuk, then all of a sudden Christian McCaffrey is going to say, well, wait a minute, like, maybe I want a little bit more.
So
but then you have to consider, okay, how's that going to affect the rest of our roster? And then you have Trent Williams over here, whose number for this year is a little lower on the contract that it has been in other years. He said, well, if you give him an adjustment, I'm the best left tackle in football. I'm your most indispensable player. So it's just interesting to see these things bubbling up across the league now, you know? And I mean, at the highest level with the quarterbacks, you know, we never really have quarterbacks hold in, right? Like, because Jordan Love's not holding out, but you know,
he might as well be.
In that case, it's like, generally, in the past, we've seen quarterbacks approach it like, I'm a little bit different than the rest of the guys here. It's hard for the team to function without me out there. Now, Jordan's a great person. I'm sure he's doing everything he can, but he feels like I got to get mine now.
So the question is, as you know more than anybody else, certainly since the times when we worked together at NFL Network, the hallmark of it was wondering when the hell midnight was going to strike on the collective bargaining deal and the holdout and the lockout of 2011, where you were on a street corner in Washington, D.C., and I was sitting in the NFL Total Access studio in L.A., and we were talking daily, like, when the hell is midnight striking? You know it's a midnight strike league. Yep. The question is when does midnight strike on these situations? Because quarterback, wide receiver, whatever, you know, there is obviously week one as a midnight strike. Correct. Yeah. But there's also tons of practices that you need to get under your belt here. Right. And so I don't, and in this day and age now where we're going to end up talking about maybe expanding the offseason and things like that, where for more off days and moving the start of training camp up, I'm just wondering, and there's also the midnight strike of, you knew Justin Jefferson was going to get done. So why would you not have midnight strike earlier for you first? Right. Like, when does midnight set a deadline of the draft? When does midnight strike? You know, and I think it's interesting because when the owners did the CBA with the players, they strengthened the holdout rules again, and maybe didn't anticipate, like, okay, like, well, how are the players going to react to this? Now, obviously, it's different in the case of like a CeeDee Lamb or a Trent Williams who are holding out, so they're accumulating fines now, and those guys' contracts are going to be big enough where they can say, okay, well, I may be losing this much money a day. I think it's $50,000 a day. I could be losing this much money a day, but I'm going to force them to give it back to me in the end, right? Whereas guys who aren't making as much money can't do that. And the problem with holding in, like, and again, like, this is something maybe the owners didn't anticipate, is that is right in front of, like, the team's face. Like, you know, like Bill Belichick always had that line, like, we're only going to discuss the players who are here. Right. Well, now the guy's there. You know what I mean? Like, so yes. So the guys who are holding in are actually there, and it's a way to create leverage. It's a way to kind of have it right in the team's face, and the teammates see it and everything else. And, you know, other teammates observe how their star teammate is being treated. So it's tricky for the coaches. You know, it's tricky for the front office. And, you know, I think ultimately, does Brandon Ayuk need a month and a half of practice to be ready to go? Does CeeDee Lamb need a month and a half of practice to be ready to go? Probably not. But there does come a point where you're like,
you're going to increase the chance of injury. It could affect performance.
So you're saying middle of August is a midnight strike?
I mean, I think that there's a point where it's like, maybe going into that preseason game where you're going to play the guys, whether you use the second preseason game or the third preseason game that way. That's changed a little bit since they shortened the preseason. But I would say when you kind of shift from camp mode into like, we're going to do a mock game week and we're going to like put in like just the bones of a game plan.
Right.
That's when the teams really shift from, all right, this is like we're in competition mode to we're in getting ready for the season mode. And I think that's sort of, I guess, the first unofficial checkpoint that's coming if guys are committed to staying away early on.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.